If it rains. Chapter 1. The sound of rain. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the world hadn't noticed. The sea still heaved against the pier, and the air still carried that wet, restless sound of something unresolved. He sat by the window of the old cafe, staring through the glass that once reflected her face beside his. 17 years, and she was still somewhere in the sound of rain. When she finally appeared, same walk, same calm way of holding a glass. It felt less like seeing her again and more like remembering a truth he had tried too long to forget. She paused in the doorway, the wind pressing at her coat, and for a moment he thought she might turn back. But she didn't. She came in, nodded to the waiter, and crossed the room like someone moving through memory, hesitant but sure of the distance. "Do you mind?" she asked, standing beside his table. He shook his head. "No." She sat down. The chair creaked softly, the same sound it had made years ago when she first sat across from him, back when everything felt easier. "You look the same," she said. He smiled, but it didn't last. "You don't. That bad." "No. Just different." The waiter brought her coffee without asking. She thanked him quietly, eyes on the cup, steam rising between them. For a while, neither spoke. The clock on the wall ticked. A couple at the far table laughed softly, then stopped. The sea made its slow, steady sound against the pier outside. "You still live here," she said. "Yes." "All this time?" He nodded. Didn't see much sense in leaving. She looked out the window. "I used to think people stayed only when they'd given up." He watched her reflection in the glass. "And now? Now I think some stay because they still believe something might come back." He looked down at his cup. "Did it?" She smiled faintly. "I'm here, aren't I?" "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." The waiter came back to refill their cups. Neither of them touched the coffee. Outside, the clouds moved low and fast. The sea had changed color, steel gray to silver, silver to blue-black. He said, "You came back because of the storm?" She hesitated. "I came back because I had to see it again. The sea, the place, the sound of it." He nodded slowly. "You mean us?" She looked at him then, directly. "Maybe." A long silence settled between them, the kind that carries too many unspoken words and no way to start them. He reached for his lighter, set it on the table. "Still don't smoke?" "I quit." "Good." He flicked the lighter open, closed it again. The click filled the pauses like punctuation. "You still have that nervous habit," she said. "It's not nervous." "It is." He stopped flicking it. "Maybe." The tide was coming in. You could hear it through the walls, the soft push and pull that used to lull them to sleep. "You ever think of writing?" she asked suddenly. "No." "You should have." He looked at her. "You always said that." "I always meant it." He smiled. "Maybe that's why I didn't." The waiter cleared the table next to them. Chairs scraped against the floor. Somewhere in the back, a door slammed, then quiet. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she said. "I didn't think you'd come back. So we were both wrong." "Seems that way." She traced the rim of her cup with one finger, slow circles that left faint lines in the steam. "There's a lot we were wrong about. Most of it. Do you regret it?" He looked out toward the sea. "I regret stopping before we were finished." "We were never finished." "That's what I mean." The light outside began to fade. A fishing boat moved out across the horizon, small against the gray. He watched it until it disappeared. "You married?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. "I was. And now?" "Now I'm here." He nodded. "I see. I doubt you do." "Maybe not." She looked at him carefully. "You still don't ask questions when you're afraid of the answers." He smiled without humor. "And you still answer like you're protecting something." "I am." He waited. "What?" "My piece." The cafe had emptied. Only the two of them remained, with the smell of coffee and salt air and the ghost of rain. He said, 17 years is a long time." "It doesn't feel that long when you say it," she said. "How does it feel?" "Like yesterday, only colder." He nodded slowly. "I kept the house." Her eyes flicked up. "The one on the hill?" "Yes." "I thought it would have fallen apart by now." "It tried." "Why keep it?" He looked at her. "Because you said once it had a good view of the storms." She smiled, barely. "You always did love the weather more than people. Maybe that's why I stayed. Maybe that's why you were lonely." He didn't reply. The sound of the tide rose, louder now, wind pressing against the windows. The waiter dimmed the lights, glanced at them once, then left. "You don't have to stay," he said. "I know. You shouldn't have come. I know that too." He looked at her across the small table. The lines around her eyes were deeper now, but the look in them hadn't changed. It still carried that same quiet defiance that once drew him like gravity. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I heard the storm was coming," she said. "And because I knew you'd still be here, waiting for it." He laughed softly. "You always think too much of me." "No," she said. "Just enough." They left the cafe together. The air outside was heavy, the sky low, the sea restless again. The boards of the pier were slick underfoot. She walked beside him without speaking. Their footsteps echoed against the water. At the end of the pier, he stopped. The horizon was a thin line of fading light. "You remember this place," he said. "How could I forget? It was raining that night, too." "It always was." He looked out over the dark water. "Do you ever think about it?" She didn't answer. The wind lifted her hair, and she brushed it back. "You said once that love wasn't about staying," he said quietly. "It was about returning." She turned to him, eyes steady. "And here I am." He nodded. "And here I still am." The sea broke hard against the pilings. She said, "It never really stopped raining, did it?" He didn't answer. They stood there, side by side, the silence between them as vast and certain as the water below. The first drops began to fall again, light, uncertain, almost shy. She tilted her head up, eyes closed, as if testing whether it was real. He watched her, the rain softening the lines of her face, blurring time, memory, and distance into one quiet, trembling moment. "You should go," he said. "I just got here. That's why." She looked at him, then at the horizon. "Will you be here tomorrow?" "I always am." She smiled once, barely. "Then maybe I'll come back." "Maybe," he said. They stood there a moment longer, until the rain began in earnest, harder, colder, washing the salt from the air. When she finally turned to leave, he didn't stop her. He just watched, like a man watching the sea take back what it never promised to return. And when she was gone, he stayed a while longer, the rain on his face, the storm rising again, the world sounding exactly as it had before she came. Chapter 2. The House on the Hill. Morning came soft and gray. The sea was still restless, turning over itself like something that hadn't yet decided to calm. She walked the shore with her hands in her pockets and her shoes in the wet sand. The tide had left its markings, broken shells, a cigarette butt, the faint print of last night's rain. The air smelled of salt and iron. It was the smell of the place she'd sworn she wouldn't return to. The cafe windows were fogged, chairs stacked. She slowed when she passed, half expecting to see him still there, a dark shape against the glass. But the tables were empty, and the sound inside was only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint dripping from the awning. She moved on. The streets wound upward, past the harbor and the shuttered shops, until the hill began. Her breath came harder. The wind met her face. She remembered the climb, the way he used to take it 2 steps ahead, turning sometimes to grin at her over his shoulder. She hadn't thought about that in years, but the memory stayed intact, as if it had been waiting. When she reached the house, she stopped. It looked smaller than she remembered. The paint peeled, the shutters loose. Yet it still faced the sea as if that were purpose enough. The grass along the path had grown wild. She thought about turning back, but then she saw him. He was at the fence, hammer in hand, driving in a new board. He didn't look surprised. He only looked up, wiped his sleeve across his forehead, and said, "You came early." "I didn't sleep," she said. "Storm kept you up?" "Something like that." He nodded and set the hammer down. "Coffee." She hesitated. "If there's enough for 2. "There's always enough." They went inside. The door stuck the same way it always had. The air smelled of wood and old rain. He moved through the kitchen easily, like someone who had stopped thinking about what each motion meant. The kettle hissed, cups clinked. He poured the coffee, handed her one, and sat across from her at the small table near the window. The room was clean but bare. A few books stacked on the sill. A coat hung by the door. The same photograph still on the shelf, face down. She nodded toward it, still hiding that. He glanced at it, then back at her. "It fell once. Or you dropped it." "Maybe both." She reached over and turned it upright. The frame had a crack through one corner, but the picture was clear, the 2 of them on the beach, wind in their hair, laughing at something long forgotten. Sunlight held in the paper like a promise. "You kept it," she said. "Couldn't throw it away. You threw away everything else." He smiled, but it was small. Some things don't stay thrown. They drank in silence for a while. The wind touched the windows. The sea below kept its low, steady breathing. He stared out toward it. You still think it's beautiful, she said. It's the only thing that hasn't lied to me. Don't start that, she said softly. He shrugged. You asked. She studied his face. The years had drawn lines around the eyes, along the jaw. He looked the way the house sounded. Solid, worn, still standing. Why did you keep this place? She asked. He thought about it before answering. Because it faces the weather. You can see the storms before they reach you. And you like to be warned. I like to be ready. She looked around. It's lonely up here. He nodded. Yes. The kettle hissed again, though it was empty. He rose, shut off the gas, then leaned against the counter. You said you weren't coming back. I know. What changed? She looked at him and said, Nothing changed. That's why I came. He didn't speak. The light shifted, moving slowly across the table. Dust in the air caught it like small, bright fish. He said, You staying long? No. Where will you go? I haven't decided yet. He nodded, the way he used to when she said something he didn't like but couldn't argue with. You could stay here for a night. That wouldn't help. It might. No. It would only start something neither of us can finish. He set his cup down. We never finished it before. That's the point. He looked at her, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. The clock on the wall ticked twice, then stopped. Outside, gulls turned in the wind. A beam of sunlight broke through the clouds and touched the edge of the sea. She stood and walked to the window. It's clearer now, she said. For a while. She turned back to him. There's always another storm, isn't there? Always. She moved to the door. I'll take the afternoon ferry. I'll drive you. No, she said. I'll walk down. He nodded once. You'll come back again. She smiled faintly. If it rains. He followed her to the porch. The air was cool, the grass wet. From up here, the town looked small, the sea endless. She wanted to remember it that way. He said, You know, it's strange. After all this time, it feels like you never left. I never did, she said. Not really. They stood there, neither willing to end it. The wind pressed at their coats. Somewhere below, a bell rang from the harbor. Goodbye then, she said. He looked at her carefully. For now. She walked down the path, the sound of her steps fading into the wind. He watched until she disappeared among the dunes, then turned back to the house. The photograph on the table caught the light. It showed two people laughing by the water, young and sure of the weather. He picked it up, set it face down again, and stood listening. The sea was already changing color. Out past the pier, the line of the horizon darkened. A new wind was coming in from the west. He closed the door and waited for the sound of rain.